Welcome to Let's Talk Elevators, where we hear from voices within the vertical transportation industry. I'm your host, Morgan Jones, and this show is sponsored by Hyperion Solutions, whose focus is to provide tailored solutions that elevate the customer experience. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Elevators. Today, our guest is Tom Schmidt from MEI. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thanks for having me.
Tom, I would love to hear your story. Tell us about yourself and how you came to be in your role that you are now with MEI.
I trades my whole life. I started out as an electrician at 18 years old and was a union electrician for 21 years before I got organized into the elevator trade.
I love that. Fascinating. And how did you step into the elevator world?
I was doing the electrical portion of an elevator remodel and met the right people at the right time. They noticed the quality of work that I was installing and came to me.
I love that. I love that it just, is a good reminder to always put your best foot forward because you never know where opportunity is going to arise or doors are going to open. Very cool.
Absolutely.
Well, let's get started in talking about being in the field and being really in a machine room on site with elevator equipment. Tell us, I imagine no one day is ever exactly the same for you, but routine is probably pretty important. What's a day in the life like for you?
For me, I'm in service. So my role is to keep the elevators properly maintained, fix any issues that arise just through daily use since everything is moving. It does require some attention. And then if there's any malfunctions with the elevator, to get it back up and running as quickly as possible.
Got it. What are some of the challenges or issues that you run into and have had to kind of work your way through?
Just daily use. I live in the Midwest. Up here, especially this time of year, there's a lot of salt and sand on the road, so it gets in the sills and makes the elevator doors run slower and inconsistent, so it can cause failures. So it's kind of the main thing that this time of year, a lot to do with doors.
Yeah, I can imagine that that's probably a pretty common occurrence across a lot of places that experience a lot of snow and ice and all the elements that affect elevator equipment that you wouldn't think of.
No, and the other thing that really affects it too is the buildings um, amp up their velocity of their HVAC systems in the winter to overcome the cold. And that creates what's called stack pressure, stack effect. So it causes the elevator doors to respond differently than it would, say, in the spring or the fall, due to different external pressures.
Fascinating. When you're out there dealing with shutdowns and these weather impacts and various other things, how are you balancing the speed of responding quickly and helping customers to get their elevators back up and running with being thorough and doing a good job?
Start with customer service, just the communication part of it. So I'll get on site and I will make contact with whoever called it in, because in my eyes, that's who saw the problem or reported the problem. So I get their input on what they saw, what was happening during the time. Then I also look into it a little bit deeper to discover what it's going to take to get the elevator back up and running or fixed. And then I communicate that with the customer before I start, so that speed is never a factor in my job, because it's so dangerous with so many moving parts that it's programmed into each and every one of us just to take our time and do things the right way. And a lot of times we do things the same way over and over again. And a lot of times you can think about it and you won't realize why you always do it the same way every time. It's because the outcome is the same. You're used to a process, and when you skip steps is usually when people make mistakes, and in our industry, a tendency of getting hurt.
Yeah, I think that's a really good reminder to follow procedure and, like you said, do the same steps every time so that you're staying safe and ensuring that important things don't get missed. What are some mistakes or things maybe that you see from building owners or even misunderstandings that are common?
I would say, again, circling back, the main thing is the doors. And it can even be in a climate in the South that doesn't deal with winters or sand and salt. Any debris in the sills really cause the elevator to be unreliable. So if a building owner would know to just have their maintenance team focus on that, it would increase reliability on the elevators because even on service, we only get to see the elevators depending on their contract. It can be monthly. It can be monthly. It can be twice a year. It can be quarterly. So
Mm,
a lot of times we rely on the customer and what they see and the situation because they are our biggest allies in figuring out the problem.
that's a good takeaway. I wouldn't have thought from the perspective of a maintenance or service contract, maybe not having a pretty regular or frequent touch point, and then some of the responsibility going back to the building owner to participate in maintaining all the equipment.
They don't get involved in maintaining the equipment. They really get involved in just keeping that the elevator and everything is surrounding the elevator clean, and that
Right.
will produce longevity for them. And it's in their best interest because it costs them a lot of money. Elevators are insanely expensive to install and to maintain.
Sure. And like you said about the doors and the sills, even doing something as simple as having a building owner talk to their janitorial staff about cleaning out those sills or making sure there's no debris or obstructions. That's an interesting point.
It's,
What kind of training or experience do you feel like best prepared you for the role that you're in?
well, I've always been in service, even as an electrician. When I was done with my 2-year degree, I got into their union apprenticeship. And once I was a journeyman, I got right into service. So customer service to me it's been a standard for me, a daily thing where I don't get to work with a bunch of other people all the time as far as coworkers. My coworkers are my customers. So that's another reason why I keep that relationship going because as soon as they know how much I care about their facility, then they're really open as far as communication goes. They're glad to see me. So yeah, just surrounding what is important to them is important to me, and I make sure that they know that. I'm able to, even if it's something minute, I make sure that they know it's important, and I don't roll my eyes or make any gestures that make them feel like it's not important to me. So I make sure to put them first.
I love that. I love the line that you said what's important to them is important to you. And that's probably the root of all customer service.
And how you gain their trust and how I have found to gain their trust is never lie. Always tell the truth, even if it's implicating, right? Because you never have to remember the truth because the
Right?
truth never changes.
Right? Good one. Well, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's looking to join the elevator industry from a technician or mechanic standpoint?
First thing I would ask is, are you afraid of heights? Because a lot of people look at merely the wage and the benefit package and think of this as something that they want to pursue because it is a very well reimbursed trade. The fact of the matter is if you're afraid of heights or you lack mechanical ability, this might not be the answer for you. So I suggest if the trades or mechanical ability is your strong suit, there's no one trade that can prepare you better than the other because once you get into the union, we self-train. So we make sure that you know all of the appropriate material and safety steps and educational stuff before you're responsible to make decisions. So it's a 5-year apprenticeship program. So it usually has a tendency of working itself out, but my number one advice is don't get hung up on the money and the benefits. Make sure that it's a right fit for you because if it's not, you're setting yourself up for disappointment and could possibly be endangering yourself.
I think that's a great point. I think really important for people to take away, not to just look at the monetary potential benefits of joining the industry, but what it really takes to be successful and to ensure, like you said, that those things are going to align with who they are and what they're prepared to do safely. So I can imagine there's a lot of times when you get a call or you show up to a job site with very little information to go on. How do you go about troubleshooting or diagnosing whatever kind of issues are presenting?
I like to say I use all my senses. So when I walk into a building, I'm always smelling to see if there's any abnormal smells, if anything smells burnt or out of place. Even if you're in a building for the first time, you can pick up on some abnormalities there. I listen. If the elevator's running, I listen for abnormal noises, things that are clunky, loud, screechy, kind of leads you to possible issue.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also like to talk to, if the building owner or maintenance person isn't available to talk to that actually called in the problem, talk to the people that, like the residents of an apartment building, they usually have a very good idea of patterns, failure points, because they live there. It's their house. So I try to take all of that and build a puzzle. And then we have diagnostic tools that are also in place that can lead you down a path due to a fault code. Like it builds a pattern on what the elevator logged that it didn't like, and that can lead you down a repair path as well. So you kind of take all of those things in combination to come up with the kind of the story which happened right before it broke down, so you kind of know what to fix.
I like that approach. So I know just even from my own experience, elevator code is something that has changes kind of frequently and things get adopted or amended in different places. How do you stay up to date with what's changing across the industry, whether that be codes or even technology?
Our union is very good about bringing educational stuff to us. So anything industry wide, as far as the drives that control the elevators or door operators or any parts associated, the manufacturers really like to educate you on their product, because the more you know about their product, I think they think you're going to sell it for them, type of a deal, or become more aware of their product so you're able to fix it faster
Sure.
and turn better customer service. Between that and our code updates are required every 2 years to maintain our license. So that continuing education, if you don't keep up on it, then you lose your license, and it becomes a big headache to get that back current. So I
Yeah,
wouldn't say that's forced on us, but in a way that the continuing education, the code updates are put in front of us for a reason, and that way, so it's tied to your license, so it does force you to stay current.
that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's another good reminder for somebody like me on the supplier side to ensure that we're doing all that we can to educate people like you with our products and what's changing or what's new or how it applies to code changes and things like that, or to other related components within an elevator system, so that, like you said, we're doing our best to position you in a way to work most effectively with our supplies or equipment and to have the least amount of downtime.
And it does go both ways, because like I said before, we do things the same way all the time as far as a pattern for safety.
Hmm.
But how that relates to product and material is the part that we used even a few years ago might be replaced with something that's better. So the product education goes a long way as far as keeping the customer's product as good as it can possibly be.
So elevator emergencies, I'm sure, don't always happen within like a 9 to 5. They probably happen nights and weekends and holidays and lots of inopportune moments. So when maybe you've had kind of a full day already, or just stakes are high, there's a lot of pressure in the situation. How are you coming best prepared to handle those?
Being as rested as possible. In service, we are required to be on call. So it's just part of the role. Our physical liabilities are less than construction, because we're not moving around all of the steel that it takes to install an elevator. We're historically doing smaller stuff. So it's easier on our bodies. It's harder mentally, because it's just more stressful when, say, there's somebody trapped or a broken elevator in a building that has one elevator.
Mm.
Just so the stakes are high. But the best way you can prepare is plan on going on a call, and then plan on being rested as much as you can. Like, there is days that you go from one to the next to the next to the next. And even in those days between calls, it's okay to have something to drink or eat. I always bring everything with me, because I never know if you're going from emergency to an emergency. I never want to take the time away from somebody that's waiting for me. Just those couple things. And the other thing I would say would be a supportive spouse, because in the middle of the night, say you've had a long day, like you had mentioned, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're dead tired. You're not used to the phone ringing, but when your spouse knows that you're on call and knows how important it is that you answer that call, sometimes it's nice to have that help to get up and get going, and then not have them upset when the phone does ring, because
Sure.
they know that it's important. And then the other thing to mention with that is we take an oath of obligation to help every mechanic that we work with, not company dependent, right? We don't help just the people that work for our same company. If somebody would call from another company, maybe stuck on a product that we supply and has questions, I feel it is our obligation to answer those questions because sometimes we're the ones answering the phone at 2 a.m. and sometimes we're the ones making the phone call at 2 a.m. hoping somebody's going to answer. So there's a couple things, but I would say that the biggest thing is educating your spouse and just how important it is because that is what makes all the difference in the world.
I love that you take such dedication and commitment to your job and to serving your customers. And I love that you bring a really good point about making sure that you're well prepared. You may be in a situation where you're not going to get a lunch break or a time to step away. And so doing all that you can to be prepared for that. And then I do think it's so super important to have a partner or a spouse who's going to be supportive of you getting called away at crazy times, crazy hours, and maybe pretty often. So I think a lot of us can understand that there are often gaps, maybe an understanding between our side of the industry and building owners, property managers, people on the other side of the fence. What's something that you wish the other side better understood? What would make things a little bit easier in that gap?
I think one of the rubs is, like I mentioned before, everything involved with elevators is expensive, and a lot of it is it's safety driven. It's 100% safety if you really want to look at it. I think if the customers knew or had a better understanding, I should say, of just how expensive the parts are, they would be more prepared for what the cost of the repair is going to be. I think the elevator companies charge a fair price for their repairs, but to the customers, that may seem exorbitant just because they don't understand everything associated with the repair.
Yeah, I can
That'd
relate
be
to that.
if the customers would know just how much is required to be safe and the steps that it takes, I think that would bring a better understanding to the final invoice for sure.
Sure. And again, just the importance of having building owners, property managers, of the understanding what it takes to keep an elevator system at large functional and maintained for longevity. And I can imagine to your point, they find out that some tiny button needs to be replaced and then get the cost of not only the material but the labor to come and do that, not being prepared for it and being a little shell shocked. But I think that's a really great point that we all need on that side of things to try and prepare customers as best we can for like I said, what it takes to keep it going. So technology and tools are another aspect, I'm sure, of your regular day to day. Are there any programs, tools that help you to be more efficient or have made your job easier maybe over time?
Yes, each one of the manufacturers has their own monitoring system. So like I said, it logs the faults. So you can see a list of the most recent faults. And some systems even allow you to log into them remotely. As you're being dispatched, you can look at the symptoms on that diagnostic tool, and it kind of gets your head going down a path of what to look at, what to check, so you can kind of hit the ground running when you get on site. So that really helps things be as quick as possible.
How do you mentor new people coming into the field?
I focus on safety because a lot of the the young kids, and they're not even young in this trade because I was 40 years old when I got into this trade. So it's not necessarily young, it's new, the
Hmm.
new people. And not everybody thinks the same, and not everybody does things the safest possible way. So I focus on that so that I start building in them the repetition of doing things the same way and verbally telling them while I'm doing it, why the reason I'm doing it that way. Sometimes it sounds like I'm talking to myself, but I'm say it out loud so that they can just look at me and if I was to be silent, they wouldn't know what I'd be thinking or why I was doing the next thing. But if I speak it out loud, it helps them to understand my process. And we also have a thing in this trade called a JHA. So job hazard analysis is what that stands for. Before you do anything new or at the start of each day, you do one of these JHAs to help you and your helper, apprentice, or fellow mechanic to think through the process so that you're doing things the most efficient and safest way possible.
That is really important. I love that you take the mentorship approach of helping the other person to understand the why behind whatever you're doing to keep safety at the forefront all times, because that's most important for everybody across our industry. Get
Right? And you can't help but to build skills with longevity in the trade. That combined with safety will just make you successful because you can be really fast, but you can't be really fast and really safe.
That's a great point. What do you feel like, Tom, is the most rewarding part of your job or what you do?
Walking away with the feeling that you actually helped the customer. Like I said before, I treat my customers like friends and family. They know me, they know my story, and I know theirs. So when I walk away with a repair that's complete, and sometimes that requires bringing outside help. Like I said, we help each other, right? But communicating to the customer that it's fixed and it's tested and verified, and then to see their smile on their face is the reward that makes it worth doing what we do.
Love it. Tom, are there any last takeaways you would want for the listeners today?
I would say not only is it the safety of the mechanics and the apprentices working on the equipment, it's the public safety that you have to be aware of. So when you're getting on escalators and you're getting on and off elevators, just pay attention to your surroundings because a lot of times there's telltale signs that something's about to happen. And if you're not looking at your phone and actually engaged in what's around you, I'll keep you safe.
That's a great reminder. Well, Tom, thank you so much for being part of our episode today. And I would say to all the other mechanics and technicians out there, from the early mornings to the late nights and the holidays and the weekends, it doesn't go unnoticed. And from the rest of us across the industry, I think we can all say thank you so much. Thanks for listening to this episode of Let's Talk Elevators. If you enjoyed the conversation, subscribe and leave us a review. If you have questions or ideas for a future episode, connect with us at letstalkelevators.com. Until next time, stay safe and keep moving up.